this entire article, but there are points in here that I want to point out because it piqued my interest, man. Now, she was basically saying the sparkle has worn off on this league. People are not watching, people are not showing up, the numbers aren't looking as good as the first year. All right, so that's basically what she's getting at right here. She stated that inside the renovated arena, which added roughly 150 seats, bringing the capacity from 850 to 1,000
empty seats at 1,000 capacity arena. A league spokesperson caught in what appears to be a direct lie about sellouts. And Breanna Stewart and Napheesa Collier's ambitious 3-on-3 league facing a brutal second-year reality check. Sports journalist Annie Costabile just published a damning exposé in The Rival. And the numbers she's reporting paint a picture that's completely opposite of what Unrivaled has been telling us. So let's break down exactly what's happening here, because this goes way deeper than just attendance problems.
Were empty. Now, I didn't expect them to have a full house every game. They didn't even have a full house every game last year. They had 850 seats. You couldn't fill that up. What makes you think you can fill up 1,000 seats, right? Now, maybe they had the idea of, hey, we got Paige Beckers, we got Malongo, Citron, we have these new legs, we have a lot more stars in the league. Maybe that will increase our fan base. Not mad at the idea, but I can see how this could be a little concerning for some people. Although I'm like, yo, I wouldn't go in full panic mode because this only your second year, right? It's only your second year.
Here's the concrete situation. Unrivaled renovated their Miami arena during the offseason, adding roughly 150 seats to bring total capacity from 850 to exactly 1,000 fans. That's not a massive expansion, but it signals ambition. They brought in Paige Buckers, Angel Reese, and other high-profile names. The expectation was clear: bigger stars equals bigger crowds. Except that's not what happened. According to Costabile's reporting, seats were visibly empty during opening weekend games. Now, before anyone jumps in with "it's only year 2, give them time," I want you to consider this specific detail. They couldn't consistently fill 850 seats in year 1. What made them think adding capacity was the right move?
You have to allow businesses to get on their feet. It's going to take them some time, right? Logically, it's going to take some time. But I can understand the thought being in the back of some people's head where they're saying, dang, man, we can't fill up an 1,000 capacity arena and we added all these new players, all these players that people like and love, all these players that we thought added to the viewership for the WNBA. Now, the thing is, like I stated in my video before, if it's not the players, it must be the format. If it's the format, you have a lot to worry about. You have a lot to worry about. Annie Costabile, nonetheless, was saying that the ratings were...
The viewership numbers tell an even more concerning story. Unrivaled's opening slate on January 5th, which kicked off with a Monday afternoon game, averaged 175,000 viewers across TNT and True TV. The two True TV exclusive games that same day, 32,000 viewers. That's not a typo. 32,000 people watching a league that's been positioned as the future of women's basketball. But here's where it gets really interesting. Compare that to last year's opening weekend. Games on January 9th, 2024 averaged 139,000 viewers across TNT and True TV. The 4 games that aired January 10th and 11th last year averaged 71,000 viewers on True TV. So we're looking at modest increases in some slots, but nothing that suggests explosive growth. And when you factor in all the new star power they added, these numbers should be significantly higher.
It's in 2 games that aired both on TNT and True TV. All right, the 2 True TV exclusive games on January 5th averaged 32,000 viewers. That's tough because she gets into the numbers that happened the year before. Games on January 9th averaged 139,000 viewers across TNT and True TV. The 4 games that aired January 10th and 11th averaged 71,000 viewers on True TV. All Unrivaled games also air on HBO Max, which is not measured by Nielsen. So
now Costabile makes an important note that Unrivaled games also air on HBO Max, which isn't measured by Nielsen ratings. So the actual viewership could be higher. But here's the problem with that defense. If streaming numbers were impressive, Unrivaled would be shouting them from the rooftops. The fact that they're not sharing those figures suggests they're not helping the narrative. And this matters because of how Breanna Stewart and Napheesa Collier positioned this league from day one. They didn't just say, "We're creating a domestic option for WNBA players." They specifically framed Unrivaled as proof that women's basketball could be run better, could be more profitable, could provide better conditions than the WNBA itself. That's a bold claim that requires bold results to back it up.
He might have some bigger numbers being added to the viewership, but she made sure she stated that Nielsen didn't add their numbers in these numbers because we know how they are measuring viewership in a new way now. Like I stated, I'm not expecting them to blow me away with the viewership because there are a lot of people that don't like 3-on-3. So it is what it is with the viewership. But being the owner of this business, you are taking a second glance and you're like, wait a minute, man, what happened from year 1 to year 2? And I believe I know exactly what happened. I'm just going to give my opinion about it. I think the main thing, like, I don't have a problem with the league. I love that the women are finding ways.
Here's where Annie Costabile really puts the league on blast. She writes that despite empty seats being visible in Florida, a league spokesperson told her that every opening weekend game was sold out. Read that again. Empty seats, the arena, but the league is claiming sellouts. Now technically, you can have empty seats at a sellout if people bought tickets and didn't show up. That's a real phenomenon in sports. But Costabile's phrasing suggests skepticism about that explanation. And when you're operating a league that's trying to establish credibility, having your spokesperson make claims that don't match what reporters can see with their own eyes is a terrible look. This is the same type of credibility problem that Unrivaled has been accusing the WNBA of having. They've positioned themselves as the transparent alternative, the league that tells the truth about business realities. But now they're facing questions about whether they're being honest about their own numbers.
Money, the ones that don't want to go overseas, you have something here. I love it when people are hustling, and I love when their businesses are working. That's just how I am, man. I'm an advocate of entrepreneurship. Love it. But the problem comes in with me even, where they're trying to weaponize this league against the WNBA. That's where the biggest problem is coming in at. Trying to use this as leverage and all that. You're comparing this league to the WNBA as far as how you run it. As much as Napheesa Collier and Breanna Stewart might have thought that they were making the W look a certain way, they've been making themselves look a certain way in this CBA negotiation, man. They have been ruining their image, turning people away.
And then there's the Philadelphia decision, which might be the most fascinating part of this entire situation. Unrivaled announced they're taking their tour to the Wells Fargo Center's Xfinity Live Arena on January. That venue has a capacity between 17,000 and 20,000 fans, depending on the event configuration. Let me put that in perspective. They're struggling to fill 1,000 seats in Miami. Their home arena had visible empty seats during opening weekend, and their solution is to book a venue that holds 17 to 20 times more people. On the surface, that seems absolutely insane. But Costabile reports that Unrivaled claims these Philadelphia games are already sold out, with resale prices starting at $123 as of when she wrote the article.
And it's starting to hit, man. Now, I'm afraid they done got ahead of themselves just a tad bit too much, saying this league is sustainable after the first year, bigging up this league like it's the holy grail. I mean, yeah, it don't look good for them, man. We look here, they had 312,000 viewers across TNT and True TV last year versus the 139,000 this year, right? Now, there could be a lot of things that come into play with this viewership number. I think we had football going on at that time, that's pro and college, right?
So either Unrivaled has somehow tapped into a massive Philadelphia basketball market that's willing to pay premium prices for 3-on-3 basketball, or we're about to witness one of the most embarrassing moments in the league's short history. Because if that arena isn't packed on January 30th, after the league claimed it was sold out, the credibility damage will be severe. The Philadelphia move could be brilliant or disastrous, and there's not much middle ground. If they actually fill that arena, it proves there's regional demand they haven't been capturing in Miami. If they don't, it exposes the gap between their public claims and their actual drawing power. And given that a league spokesperson has already been caught making questionable claims about sellouts in Miami, there's reason to be skeptical about the Philadelphia numbers too.
It started on a Monday, so that was a terrible day to start. So it's a lot of nuances that go within that number, but seeing how people are excoriating this league and excoriating them, it's hard to say that their actions aren't making an impact to how people want to watch and support. Now, as we go down just a little bit more, she ended up talking about the league spokesperson and kind of putting them on blast. She didn't say her name, she just said the league spokesperson. Said Unrivaled has other ways to make money, basically talking about the tickets and merch sales. And said despite empty seats in Florida, a league spokesperson said that every opening weekend game was sold out.
But perhaps the most interesting subplot in Costabela's article involves Alyssa Thomas, and this is where the story gets really layered. Thomas is currently playing in Unrivaled's second season, but she's also announced she's joining Project B, a new 3-on-3 league launching next year that will compete directly with Unrivaled. And here's what Thomas said in an interview that Costabella quotes. "I think there's a misconception that we don't want to be overseas. For me, it's about where the best opportunity is, where I can continue to grow my future. I enjoyed overseas. There's plenty of opportunities over here. Unrivaled is an opportunity as well. 3-on-3 for me, I felt was a little harder to transition back into 5-on-5.
She ended up stating the league will also feature a tour stop in Philadelphia, which stands to pay dividends. The 2-game slate on January 30th will be played at Xfinity Mobile Arena, which has a capacity between roughly 17,000 and 20,000 fans depending on the event. So I'm just like, man, I wonder why they made this decision. You couldn't fill up a 1,000 capacity arena, but you want to go to a 17,000 one? I mean, maybe it's just about the location. Maybe. I don't know. But I don't know why they would want to go to a even bigger, like this is humongous compared to what they're playing in right now.
Read between those lines, Thomas is essentially saying 3-on-3 basketball makes it harder for her to perform in the WNBA's 5-on-5 format. That's a legitimate concern for a player whose primary career is in the W. But here's what doesn't make sense. If Thomas genuinely believes 3-on-3 hurts her 5-on-5 game, why is she playing in Unrivaled right now? And why is she committed to playing in another 3-on-3 league next year? Costabille's implication seems to be that Thomas is using her Unrivaled platform to recruit for Project B. She's physically present in Unrivaled, but she's already publicly committed to their future competitor. That's the same dynamic that WNBA players have been criticized for, being in one league while openly advocating for alternatives and making demands based on what those alternatives provide.
Basketball, I don't know, but it's hard to believe seeing that y'all can't fill up a 1,000 seated arena. Now, to finish up this article, there's an interesting little piece about Alyssa Thomas kind of doing the same thing to Unrivaled, in my opinion, that the players are doing to the WNBA. So check this part out. She said, I think there's a misconception that we don't want to be overseas. This is Alyssa Thomas, okay? For me, it's about where the best opportunity is, where I can continue to grow my future. I enjoyed overseas. There's plenty of opportunities over here. Unrivaled is an opportunity as well. 3-on-3 for me, I felt was a little harder to transition back into 5-on-5. Now, this is interesting to me because if that's the case, why are you not?
Think about what Breanna, Stewart, and Napheesa Collier have been doing during WNBA's CBA negotiations. They've repeatedly pointed to Unrivaled as proof that women's basketball can be run differently. They've used their league as leverage, suggesting the WNBA should match Unrivaled's player-friendly policies. They've positioned themselves as entrepreneurs who understand business better than WNBA executives. And now one of their own players is doing the exact same thing to them. Alyssa Thomas is in their league, taking their money, but she's already announced she's leaving for a competitor, and she's openly questioning whether their format is even good for players' primary careers. That has to stink, because it reveals that player empowerment and player leverage don't just flow in one direction. If you build your brand on players having options and using those options as leverage, you can't complain when players use that same leverage against you. The irony is almost poetic. Stewart and Collier wanted to prove that a player-driven league could succeed. But player-driven means players make decisions based on their own interests, not loyalty to the league. And Thomas is demonstrating exactly that principle.
I feel like you are there to talk about Project B at this point, man. What is going on? Now, I know Kelsey Mitchell also was there, but she never stated that 3-on-3 wasn't for her. She never stated that. Alyssa Thomas is the one that's coming out and saying, yeah, it's not for me. She experienced it, said it wasn't for her, then came back to do it again. To finish it off, though, we will check out Caitlin Clark taking over the Nike headquarters. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these videos.
Now let's talk about the bigger picture here, because this isn't just about one league struggling in year 2. This is about the narrative that's been built around Unrivaled and what happens when that narrative starts to crack. From the beginning, Unrivaled has been positioned as more than just a basketball league. It's been framed as a statement about how women's sports should be run, about what's possible when players control their own destiny, about the WNBA's failures and limitations. Stewart and Collier haven't been subtle about this. They've directly compared Unrivaled's business model to the WNBA's, usually to suggest the WNBA is doing things wrong. That's a bold strategy when your league is successful. But when your league is showing cracks in year 2, when attendance is soft and viewership isn't growing the way you projected, when your spokesperson is making claims that don't match observable reality, that bold strategy becomes a liability.
I think it skipped a little bit, but she was like, if I hit this, everybody is off work. Hold on. She almost hit the second one, man. They almost had off. Hey, that jacket tough. That jacket is hard. Look at this jacket. Oh, man. I know they'll make millions off of that jacket. Knockdown. Nasty. That's just to add a little smile to my Caitlin Clark fans, man. Shout out to y'all. Y'all let me know how y'all feel about everything going on with Unrivaled right now. Is that league spokesperson lying? Annie Costabelle putting them on blast in the article, fam. Tough work. All the numbers, the viewership, the moving from Miami to Philadelphia. Man, let me know about it all, man. I love y'all. Y'all keep it smooth.
Here's what makes this situation particularly significant right now. The WNBA is in the middle of CBA negotiations, and player leverage is a central issue. Stewart and Collier have been among the most vocal players pushing for massive changes to the CBA, and they've explicitly used Unrivaled as proof that alternatives exist. The implicit threat has been, give us what we want, or players will increasingly choose options like Unrivaled over the WNBA offseason opportunities that help fund the league. But if Unrivaled isn't actually thriving, if it's struggling with attendance and viewership and basic credibility about whether games are actually sold out, then that leverage disappears. The WNBA can look at these numbers and say, okay, you built your own league. It's not setting the world on fire. Maybe the business of women's basketball is harder than you thought, and maybe our structure exists for reasons you're now discovering yourselves. And that's a devastating position for Stewart and Collier to be in during CBA negotiation, because they've staked their credibility on Unrivaled success. They've told the world they know how to do this better. If Unrivaled fails, or even just underperforms, it doesn't just hurt their business venture. It undermines their entire argument about how the WNBA should. Now, to be fair, Year 2 is early to make definitive judgments. Businesses take time to establish themselves. The fact that Unrivaled exists at all is impressive, and providing domestic earning opportunities for WNBA players is genuinely valuable even if the league isn't profitable yet. But the problem is, Stewart and Collier didn't position this as a long-term experiment that might take 5 or 10 years to figure out. They positioned it as proof that women's basketball could be immediately viable under a different model. And immediate viability requires immediate result. The attendance issues aren't catastrophic by themselves. Lots of leagues start small. But when you add the attendance issues to the viewership stagnation, to the spokesperson making questionable claims about sellouts, to players like Alyssa Thomas openly planning their exit to competitors, to the bizarre decision to book a 17,000-seat venue when you can't fill 1,000 seats consistently, you start to see a pattern of a league that's not quite sure what it is or how to succeed. And here's the thing about patterns like that: they erode confidence. Sponsors start asking harder questions. Media partners start renegotiating deals. Players start wondering if this is really the stable alternative they were promised. And fans, who are the ultimate judges of any entertainment product, start tuning out because they sense something isn't working. The Philadelphia game on January 30th is going to be a critical moment for Unrivaled. If that arena is genuinely packed with 17,000 people paying premium prices to watch 3-on-3 basketball, it will prove there's something real here that just needs better marketing or better venue selection. But if that arena has visible empty sections, if it's clear that sold out was an exaggeration, then Unrivaled is going to face serious questions about its viability. And those questions will extend beyond just the league itself. They'll affect how the WNBA approaches CBA negotiation. They'll affect how sponsors view investments in women's basketball alternatives. They'll affect whether other players decide to invest their time and reputation in new leagues. The stakes are higher than just whether Unrivaled succeeds or fails as a business. What's particularly interesting is how this compares to the WNBA's recent trajectory. The W just came off a record-breaking season, driven largely by Caitlin Clark's arrival. Attendance was up, viewership was up, and mainstream media coverage reached levels the league had never seen before. Now, not everyone benefited equally from that growth, and there are legitimate debates about how the WNBA should capitalize on this moment. But the overall trend for the WNBA is clearly positive right now. Unrivaled, meanwhile, is showing flat or declining metrics in year 2, despite adding more star power. That's not the trajectory you want, and it raises uncomfortable questions about whether the 3-on-3 format has a ceiling that's lower than Stewart and Collier anticipated. Maybe the novelty wore off. Maybe casual fans tried it in year 1 and decided it wasn't for them. Maybe the format just doesn't translate to sustained fan interest the way 5-on-5 does. Those are questions that don't have easy answers, and they're questions that Unrivaled is going to have to address publicly if they want to maintain credibility. The strategy of having spokespeople make optimistic claims that don't match observable reality isn't sustainable. Eventually, the gap between what you're saying and what people can see becomes too obvious to ignore. So where does this leave us? Unrivaled has a choice to make. They can continue the current path of optimistic public statements that don't match the actual numbers, hoping that eventually reality catches up to their projection. Or they can get honest about where they are, adjust expectations, and build more sustainably, even if it means admitting the first 2 years haven't gone exactly as planned. The first path preserves short-term credibility, but risks a catastrophic collapse if the truth becomes undeniable. The second path is harder and requires humility, but it builds long-term trust and gives the league room to grow without the weight of inflated expectations. Given how Stewart and Collier have positioned themselves as straight-talking entrepreneurs who see through the WNBA's spin, you'd think they'd choose the honest path. But so far, the evidence suggests they're choosing the optimistic spin path, and that's disappointing. Because women's basketball needs successful domestic leagues. It needs options for players beyond just the WNBA and overseas contracts. Unrivaled could be that option if it's run with realistic expectations and honest communication. But if it's run with the same kind of credibility stretching that Stewart and Collier have accused the WNBA of doing, then it's just recreating the same problems in a new package. The next few weeks are going to tell us a lot. Watch what happens in Philadelphia on January. Watch whether Unrivaled starts being more transparent about actual attendance and viewership figures. Watch whether they adjust their strategy or double down on the current approach. And watch how this affects the WNBA CBA negotiations. Because you can bet WNBA executives are paying very close attention to every empty seat and every disappointing viewership number. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about whether one 3-on-3 league succeeds or fails. It's about whether the alternative model that Stewart and Collier have been championing actually works. And right now, 2 years in, the answer is looking